and welcome to another edition of History After Hours podcast. Now, my name is Kevin Puffrey, and with me is
Ron Franklin.
And today, we're going to get this date right. It is October 11th, 2017. So, we're going to talk about several things, and we actually came prepared. We both have notes today.
Yeah. So just
rare.
Winging it, yeah.
We have some student questions, and we'll try to get to a few of them at the end. I want to start with this just briefly. I saw over the weekend, or maybe it was yesterday sometime, that there is a few things. A linguist was on a news show. His name is John McWhorter, and he was analyzing all of Trump's speeches. And he came up with some...
Since he's been president?
Since, actually, candidate Trump all the way through now.
All right, okay.
And they asked him some questions like, what do you think about Trump's speech? And the linguist was like, it seems like he did not improve his speaking ability at all in high school or college, that it's so basic. Now, if you've heard his speeches, he says things repeatedly.
Right.
Like, obviously, he says the word huge, tremendous,
Bigly.
He also tags a lot of his sentences with like, believe me. Or he'll say stuff like, no one knew it was so easy. Mm-hmm. No one knew it was this complicated. And a lot of people don't know this, but. And he said that's actually kind of an alpha male thing to say. Like, no one knows this but me. And sometimes the linguist, it implies that maybe that is actually something he just learned. And so he uses that.
Okay, is he suggesting that this is something he's resorting to and he doesn't really know what he's doing because he has a basic speech pattern? Or is it something he's developed on purpose as a way of messaging to people who don't think as quickly? I mean, I don't know.
The linguist actually says that he didn't think Trump, whatever subject he was talking about, there's probably two things going on. But one of the problems is he has no other insight. So he wants to say something else. So he'll put those tags on as a way to kind of put an exclamation point on what he just said.
So it's a way of extending the sentence and emphasizing what he said without actually having anything else relevant to say.
And this is why for a lot of people, including me, when I was listening especially to his campaign speeches or I would go listen to his rallies, he would say something like, we need a wall, and then he would talk about the wall, but he never really said anything additional. There was no other insight to the wall. He would just keep repeating a mantra like, we need the wall, they're coming over here, we need this wall, it's going to be a beautiful wall, this wall is going to be awesome. So he wasn't extending the conversation, he was simply just tagging it with exclamation points about how beautiful the wall was and believe me, we need this.
Yeah, well, what I'm asking is, do you think that he's doing that because he actually can't come up with anything else to say? Or is it just, well, this is good enough?
This is to me, this is the same argument as this chaos on purpose that he creates. Does he do these tweets because he's some sort of master manipulator? I don't know. I have no idea. I can't predict what he actually thinks.
You know what I think it boils down to? I think this is like the ultimate reality show for him. We talked about this during the campaign, and could he really be president? And we both sort of nodded in the other direction, like I don't think he really could be. I don't see how someone who is as inarticulate and as offensive as he tends to be to people who are just anybody who opposes him, he just slashes and burns. I don't care whether you're with the Republican Party or the Democrats or the Independents. Pick an ethnicity, pick a religion. If he doesn't understand it or doesn't agree with it or it seems like a threat to him, he's going to trounce it, and he did that continuously. All right, so, but is it on? Was it all just sort of geared towards the idea that maybe he didn't even believe? I've heard people say this. Maybe he didn't even really believe that he could become president, and now that he has, it's like this is like the ultimate fame. I know he's a businessman. I get that, and I know that he's been a real estate guy, and I know he's had all these other things. But he has made for a decade now, at least, his living, a lot of it as an entertainer. He's been on WWE, and he's been with and he's been on those reality shows and The Apprentice and all that stuff. And for him to jump out now and go, well, like, isn't this like the ultimate high for someone like that who sort of craves that attention as he apparently does? That's part of what I think is going on.
I think you're exactly right. As he has made his living as an entertainer, because if you know, I mean, you've heard these real estate guys talk from New York. No one in New York actually thought of him as a serious real estate guy. Like he really was this genius real estate. No one's ever really considered. He was a great brander. He was a great promoter. But if you rank the top 10 guys from New York that are big real estate tycoons, he wouldn't made the list. And specifically, like The Art of the Deal, as you know, he didn't write one word of that book. You know, his name's on it. It's a picture of him on it. But the actual author is a guy named Tony Schwartz, who has come out basically against Trump, saying, look, he didn't write any of the book. Now, I'm sure there was some sort of contract between them, of course, and Trump has taken a lot of credit from that book.
Is he going to sue this guy for saying
this?
Well,
I assume, because that's another thing that we know about Trump is he has thousands of lawsuits over the years. You know, when even Bill Maher on the Bill Maher show one time made fun of Trump and Trump sued him. You know, he'll sue people for sure. Jimmy was it Stewart? Was that his name? Jimmy Stewart? Not Jimmy
Jon
Stewart.
Jon
Stewart. Yeah, there you go. Not Jimmy Stewart. not from It's a Wonderful Life. Yeah, Jon Stewart. You know, bad mouthed him, and of course he had a tweet storm against him. So I mean, we're dealing with somebody. Let's just carry this conversation one step further. There's a new book out called Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. Right. 27 mental health experts and psychologists edited by a doctor named Brandy Lee, who is also a psychologist, finally got together several months ago when Trump became president and decided that they had to speak out. So they didn't do this earlier because it was taboo while he was campaigning and before he became president. It was very taboo for a psychologist or a mental health expert to diagnose a patient they've never seen. Which makes sense. You don't, and plus Trump is a public figure. You don't want to just give him a mental diagnosis. A professional wouldn't do that. It would look very bad. But now they're pretty scared of the chaos in the Trump White House, and they've given him a diagnosis of medium grade mania with extreme narcissism. Which, I mean, I don't think that's headline news.
Right.
But they say he has a formal thought disorder called flight of ideas, and this ties into the speech thing we were talking about, where as he is talking, one of the words he says will trigger a thought or another expression or a whole nother subject. And he'll go down that path for a minute, and that'll trigger something else. And this is another reason that his speeches sometimes are just chaotic at best.
Is it like a form of attention disorder?
Well, I don't know. I've never done any research on this flight of ideas thing, but they said it's comparatively speaking to Robin Williams' monologue. If you know Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, the comedian, it's kind of like his jokes where he would go from one voice to another subject. And he talked really fast.
Right, yeah, rapid fire.
So instead of jokes, though, it's insults or or subject matter that just constantly changes from one talking point to another. So you could ask him a very serious question about foreign policy, and by the end of the paragraph, he's talking about building a wall or immigration, something, or lowering taxes, whatever it is. Right. And it's hard to get him pinned down sometimes on a specific subject. And if you go listen to his speeches, that's pretty. It's pretty.
It does bounce around quite a bit. I wonder too, and I think about. I've heard people question whether his age has a factor in any of in what we're seeing, or maybe it is just complete narcissism, and he just loves to say whatever he wants to say, and as long as he's hearing himself say things that he thinks sounds great, then and there's a large number of people who will just applaud and do whatever he, regardless of what he says or how he does it. And I know that there's other people who will jump out there and trash him for anything he says and does, regardless of whether he had bad intentions or not. I suppose sometimes we don't. It's hard to tell what he really intends. Like the thing with flipping the paper towels at the hurricane victims there in Puerto Rico, or the way he said, "Did you see this?" Where he goes, he tried to. I don't know if he was actually trying to sort of say it the way.
I think he was doing that lighthearted, but. Because, his wife obviously has an accent.
It came across as kind of mocking, though.
It did.
And I just wondered, if I lived there, or if I had relatives who were there, or if I had ancestry from there, then that would not sit well with me, considering the disaster they just done. It didn't seem like it was an appropriate, even if he meant it lightheartedly, it just doesn't seem appropriate for the moment. So, I get the criticism of him, and I also understand that sometimes he is trying to be lighthearted. So you got to try to balance it out.
Well, I think he has a perception problem. I don't think he meant anything malicious about throwing those paper towels.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
But it looked bad. He probably didn't mean anything by saying it this way, but it looked bad. But he looks bad to me a lot.
But I don't know that he gets it.
That's right. I think he has a perception problem, a self-perception problem.
Yeah.
Like, I think he doesn't exactly know what he's putting out there sometimes.
Don't you think that comes from a sort of lack of empathy that he just can't have for people who aren't him? I mean,
Maybe.
and I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a narcissistic way. I mean, he has grown up a very wealthy, privileged person,
Yeah.
and I don't know that even if he's trying to sort of understand somebody else's point of view, I think that he struggles with that quite a bit because he just has not really experienced that side of life.
Yeah.
And so, like for example, when he talks about the disaster in Puerto Rico, he sat and said, well, even while he was there, he said this. Well, at least it wasn't like a real disaster like Katrina. And I was like, I don't know that you understand how badly that sounds to the people who are suffering right here in front of you. It's almost like you're saying it's not a real disaster, but I don't know that he meant it that way. I think that I think it sounded like he was trying to do something positive. Like, at least it's not as bad as that. I think it's what he was trying to say.
Well, think about this, where he was talking to North Korea, or actually Tillerson, our Secretary of State, was trying to negotiate, and he said he was telling people, the media, that there's several diplomatic options that we're working through.
Right.
And right after that, Trump goes, "You're wasting your time, Tillerson.
Sure.
We'll do what we have to do."
Little Rocket Man.
So, I mean, like, it seems like he's undercutting his own cabinet constantly. And I don't know that he means to do that. He's definitely doing that. And then I guess you heard this weekend the big Tillerson calling him a moron or a version of that.
Yeah, expletive moron. Yeah.
Apparently, I heard from a source, and I don't know if this is true or not, but it came from him and Trump talking about the Afghanistan situation. And Trump immediately went into a story about renovating a 21 Club, a building. And it said it took him over a year and a half. Nothing much changed. We would have been better off listening to the waiters there than the experts. And he goes, I think that he was basically trying to make the comparison that we don't need to listen to the foreign policy experts in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And, for somebody like me, I'm like, yes, let's listen to the experts, please.
Please, yeah.
But that's when Tillerson called him that, apparently. And then, of course, backtracked.
But again, I think that goes back to his sort of general frame of reference. That's all he kind of knows to compare it to, things that he's sort of experienced and had in life.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So you hope that he's got people like Tillerson who will stick around, who will say, look, in spite of what you don't quite understand about this, here's how this works, and here's how we're going to work our way through it. But I kind of go back to that reality show mentality. I like the idea about having all of the military staff around him and their families, and him standing there with the media kind of watching him going, do you know what this represents? And they're like, what, sir? The calm before the storm. And they're like, what do you mean by that? And but he was having fun with them. He was poking at the media because he knew they were going to say, what storm are you talking about? And he goes, you'll see. He baits them. He baits them on purpose, and that is a reality show because it's kind of a cliffhanger mentality. Tune in tomorrow to see what I meant by that.
That's right.
If I even bothered to talk about that. So they leave them hanging, and they are just like freaking fish in a pond. He dangles something sparkly out there for them, and they nab up on that, they'll sit and feed on that for a couple of days. In the meanwhile, he's moved on to something else.
Oh, yeah, he's the best. If he's the best at anything, he's the best at baiting the other side.
Media manipulation.
He wants them to go nuts about whatever, whether it's protesters at the NFL or...
But that's modern celebrity, if you really stop and think about it. I don't care what you say about me as long as you're talking about me.
There's no news that's bad news kind of thing. Yeah.
It used to be that people wouldn't take any kind of negative press at all. They were so, people would hide affairs. People would hide the fact that they were, that they had same-sex tendencies or whatever it was because they could be ruined or blackballed because people, you can't have negative images. And let's say that movie studios and stuff like that would control that and very guard, superstars and things like that, guard their images. Oh, yeah. Whereas now it is very much open to, as long as I'm being talked about, it doesn't really matter how outrageous I am. And I think that he's brought that entertainment ideology into what he's doing right now because the spotlights are on him 24 hours a day and people got mics in his face. They're listening to what he's doing. For an egotistical entertainer, wouldn't you love that? And wouldn't you love to mess with them?
Nothing hurts him, it seems like. Think about the Kardashians. They've made their whole career based off a sex tape that was released.
Sure.
Used to, that would ruin somebody's reputation.
Right.
That actually made somebody famous and made the whole family famous, led to millions of dollars, and now other people have tried it to, it's crazy that all negative media is maybe just as good as pop. People are talking about you. That's a good thing.
As long as my name is out there, as long as you're talking about me. That's crazy.
For serious Trump supporters, though, here we are 9-10 months down the road, and they support him. What do they like about it so far? I mean, he hasn't really delivered on any of the campaign promises yet. He's done some executive orders, but...
What I see from commentary, and again, I get a lot of this from social media posts, and I don't know I don't know these people. I don't know what their background is. I don't know how serious they are. But it seems like a lot of the support that he kind of has as a base, at least online, Twitter and this and that they just sort of ignore anything he says and any criticism that is thrown at him as liberal agenda, as media conspiracy, as fake news, and they go, God bless Donald Trump because he's actually saving America. And so they just ignore. But it seems like the more that he gets criticized, the more those people tend to just dig their heels in rather than have a real sort of legitimate conversation about where the country's actually, where we are and where we're going. And so, but I don't know, but like you said, for people who are sort of more serious and entrenched with inside politics and what I look at then are people who've been around for a while, like this Corker guy, right? Senator Corker.
Right, yeah.
And he's like, well, you know why he's vocal right now? Because he's not running for re-election. He's like, you know what, I'm not coming back, so I don't have anything to lose, and I'll say what I want to say, which is probably what a lot of people are thinking.
Right.
But then I turn that around, and I think about the people I just got through talking about who are like the online supporters and this and that, and they will call Corker out, even though he's a lifelong sort of, red state guy.
Yeah.
They'll call him out as being part of the establishment that Trump was talking bad about anyway, and so they love it when he goes back and forth with those guys.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I don't really know.
I heard Ben Shapiro, the conservative, outspoken conservative
Sure, right.
guy. He made a good point. He said, look, Trump is not about policy, and neither are his supporters. They're about issues. If you love the flag, if you say you love the troops, if you say you're going to bring jobs back, all you have to do is say it. And it's if you're going to repeal Obamacare and you want that's probably all his supporters are really looking for. They're not diving in to see what the net immigration loss is with the wall since Donald Trump has been president. They're not looking really at the premiums of the health care. They could even be on Affordable Health Care Act and not know it's Obamacare.
Yeah, we learned that, right?
So they can't like anything that he actually campaigned on because he hasn't done any of that. We've seen no change in tax code, no change in health care. That's the big two things. Of course, immigration, I don't think the wall has been built yet. So, I think he's going to lose supporters eventually. I think that. But his core base is never going to go anywhere, I don't think. I think he was right in the campaign when he said he could shoot somebody.
I don't know how often let's say the next election comes around and he has, and he runs for re-election, which he's already kind of doing, right?
Yeah.
If you have turned the Republican establishment against yourself by then, let's say that there's that you still get the same guys pretty much who are going to stay in place after the next round of congressional elections. Just assume that it pretty much looks the same.
Yeah.
The establishment is an establishment for a reason. Like
Right.
They understand the system, they know how it works. They're probably lifelong advocates of political process, and regardless of which side you're on, there's entrenchment there.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that the establishment itself, with all of his bickering with them and calling them out, that I don't know that they support him the way they did this last time,
Right.
the same way they did. I mean, I don't know that it'll happen again. So I don't even know that.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it, in 2020 because he's the incumbent.
But if they pool their money against him and the super PACs turn against him, don't you think that that's...
But the only way to beat him, wouldn't the only way to really beat him is to get a Democrat as president? Can you get...
No, you could. He doesn't automatically get the nomination.
I know, but when was the last time an incumbent...
I don't know. I'm just
I mean,
saying
that's happened. It happened with Truman, although I don't think he ran again.
But I'm just saying, I wonder,
Maybe.
Can you really crap all over the people who are in your supposed party
Yeah.
the whole time for the next, 3.5 years now, and expect the loyalty to remain when he's just calling them out? Of course, then again, I watched how bad he talked about Lindsey Graham and some of the others here recently, and then you turn around and they're playing golf together.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, it may just be a big show for everybody. I have no idea.
I don't either. It's going to be so interesting. It feels like he's already been president for 3 years. And
A lot's happened.
A lot has happened, and I can't imagine. It's too exciting. Politics. I mean, we shouldn't be talking about politics all the entire podcast. All right, now you had a few things that you'd like to bring up as well.
Yeah, I had a few, a couple of students. I'm gonna kind of tie their stuff together. The first one, a student named Julia Gallagher, 10th grader, and another one, MC Cowan. They threw some things out there about censorship and then also about social media, and I think that kind of ties in with what we're talking about right here. So I think that'd be a good jump over. So basically, just to combine these things together, Julia asked, "Do you think that we talk a lot about fake news, right? So do you think that fake news, intentional fake news, obvious fake news, like a source like The Onion or somebody like that it can be a good form of satirical entertainment, or do you think it's harmful overall?
Well, we're in a transition period where we're starting to recognize the types of media that are satirical and you can't trust them, and it's funny, and you see memes. Remember when Photoshop became good enough where you couldn't really tell it was Photoshopped? There was a time there where you saw Obama shaking hands with somebody he shouldn't be shaking hands with, and you're like, whoa, is that real? You know, your brain has to adjust. Now when you see an outlandish photo, you immediately think, Photoshop. That's not really.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting, and we mentioned this before. When audio, video, when you can't trust your own eyes with anything, they can mimic somebody's voice. So social media might completely change when, just even in the next couple of years, when you look and you're seeing a video of Trump speaking, but it's all fake, you know, and that's going to be a crazy.
To be able to figure out what's what might be a little trickier.
Right. So you might not even can trust any social media as news.
Maybe you take it all as satire, and then but you have to narrow down what can be.
What can be trusted? Only what the government tells you. That would be a bad deal too.
Well, that's tricky because then we're dystopia. All right, so let's take that over then to the next question. Then I kind of go with what MC was saying. Do you think that memes and social media and satirical entertainment that looks so real, it can be, it is fake because it's generated as news for entertainment? But let's just say use like social media just in general. Like, do you think it gets to the point where it is so overwhelmingly generated purposefully that they'll have to censor it? Should it be censored? Let's talk about that. There's censorship in general. What we think about in a democratic society, that people have the right to say what they want and to lampoon whatever they want, to become satirical and to criticize the government, and that's part of democracy. It's part of our process. But is there a flipping point where that actually comes back to bite us in the ass?
So government censorship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always scared to death of that because I think that impinges on freedom of speech. And I mean, we there's no doubt we had an election that was pretty much rigged to some degree. We don't know what with Facebook and Russian robots in a building and throwing out thousands of memes a day and targeting.
Well, but I can also talk about the fact, that aside, and I don't think it gets as much attention as it should, is the fact that the DNC purposefully tried to undercut Bernie Sanders and to promote Hillary Clinton because she was already kind of the chosen one, if you will. There's lots of evidence that kind of pushes that. So
did they do that with social media, or?
Yeah, they did it with social media, and they did it with their own. I
know they gave her the questions ahead of time.
They purposefully didn't. Well, I don't. Well, hold on. Let me back up. I don't know that they actually put fake stuff out there about him, but I know that they definitely pushed for her to look better than he did in any sort of public event. So I maybe kind of right.
Well, I look at Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live could swing elections itself, being satirical and making fun. And
don't you think that the Jimmy Kimmel stuff here recently with the healthcare debate, don't you think that his show in particular had a swing in how people felt about that and then how vocal they were about it with their congressional people?
Some of the moderates, I think, definitely leaned left after seeing him, him, the voice of that. I don't know. I mean, but Saturday Night Live was really, when you could kind of tell who might win just from watching that. But they made tons of fun of Trump, and it didn't matter. But that's different. That's old school TV. That's on Saturday night at a certain time. It gets shared a little bit with YouTube. But
you know what you're getting when you tune in.
Yes. Media, the social media that we're in, this new kind of era where you're seeing news things that look like news and everything looks legit.
Right.
I think it's going to take an adjustment period.
You don't know if it's coming from Russia. You don't know if it's coming from Venezuela. You don't know if it's coming from North Korea. You just know it's out there and it looks like something that
This was powerful when Trump in the debate, Hillary said all 11 of our intelligence agencies say that Russia is hacking the election and they're doing this. And then Trump said it could be a 400-pound guy in his basement. And you know what? He's not wrong.
Right.
There could be a 400-pound guy. Now, obviously, most of it probably did come from Russia. But once again, social media is such a game changer.
All right, so back to the question then. Should you consider censoring it?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say we're just going to have to figure out another source of news, and we have to just close our eyes with social media. Because I really don't. I don't know where this is going to end.
But isn't it an oxymoron to think that people are consuming so much more information than any other group of people who have ever lived, and yet we're getting dumber because the information is so bad?
Right. Yes, it's misinformation to the extreme. I mean, if you could censor it in a way where it makes things more valid.
Maybe censor's not the right word, because that's a touchstone. Maybe filter.
If you could filter robots, the bots that do the algorithms that just automatically throw that stuff, if you could track down non-credible sources, and I'm not talking about average citizens, I'm talking about one of those companies that's what they do. They get paid to throw out fake news. But what's fake news? I mean, you said The Onion. There's levels of this, right? There's some sources that seem to be trusted. I mean, at some points, Trump called CNN super fake news, which
all the time. Yeah,
but I trust CNN more than I do The Onion or whatever else. Sure. You got The Atlantic. You've got BBC. You got so many outlets. There's so many levels to this. So I don't know where you draw. So you have to draw the line on it, like you do gun control.
Maybe we just have to educate people as to what media outlets are actually doing a good job of being centrist, and know who's at the far ends of either side, and then let people sort of consume what they want. Maybe that's the answer.
Maybe
because you're not going.
They already do that to a degree.
I agree with you. I don't think censorship's the answer, but I think that people need to be more readily aware of what they're consuming and who's actually generating it. Maybe that's part of what we have to do to educate.
Yeah. I think you're right. Maybe there can be a new company that creates, science, math algorithms that can analyze everything that's put out. Every company
something gets flagged.
So something can get flagged, and then they can show people, hey, this is only 10% credible. This is 90% credible.
We have to work on their credibility too, though. So you can't just jump out there.
Remember
and
when what was the main thing that everybody shared?
Huh?
Starts with an S, right? Oh,
what?
When somebody Snopes, is that it?
Oh yeah, Snopes.com.
So that for a long time, people, oh nope, it's not true. Look at Snopes, because Snopes was the company that showed you what was true, and then we found out they were not quite true.
I tell you honestly, Politico does a good job of being neutral and trying to really call folks out on both sides.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just, but again, I don't know how many average everyday people are going to take the time to look for things because I know people who watch news things and read things online and social media and Twitter and Facebook or whatever, even Snapchat, and they really just sort of surround themselves with what they already want to know.
Yeah,
things that make them comfortable, things that reinforce what they already know. They aren't looking for an opposing opinion. They're not looking for a debate. They just want to know. And I think that's a weird spot to be in too. That we're sort of eliminating debate. I don't think it's healthy for the democracy not to have open debate.
Well, what's weird in this age when we're trying to figure out fake news, the person that has propagated fake news the most is Trump, and this is a president. Whether you support him or not, and believe me, I'm not no bleeding heart liberal. But whether you support Trump or not, you have to admit that he lies a ton, blatant lies. We have it on video. We know there wasn't that many people at his inauguration.
But then he can turn around and say, "Don't believe your eyes, believe me."
Believe me. Yeah, it's fake news. So he can just he's figured out a way that he can say whatever he wants. He can even double down on it. He never gets really chastised for it.
That's a stimulus response thing for a lot of his base supporters too, by the way. He just goes, fake news, and they go, yeah. They snap that up, which is weird that you've got them trained to. If he this sort of segues into the next thing I wanted to sort of bring up. Recently, within the past couple of days, well, I guess the past week or so, NBC, National Broadcasting Corporation, has come under fire from Trump because they reported on that Tillerson thing you brought up a while ago, the idea that he called him an effing moron.
Right.
And so they're like, well, he did say this, and he calls him out fake news. Something today and I don't remember what they said. That caught his attention, but it's sort of it stems from what it was before, and now he has sort of vaguely threatened, or at least thrown the idea out there, that because he considers them fake news, that he's saying that maybe NBC should have its license revoked. To no longer be able to. And again, that's not something that he can actually do, and it's a lot more difficult than people realize to try to especially a corporation like that. local agencies are the ones who get their licenses, and a national broadcasting corporation just sort of says things and people pick that up. So you'd have to cancel so many more things than just NBC. But regardless of that, the idea that because they're criticizing him, he has now floated the idea that people who are critical of him should lose their licenses. And he actually said that during the campaign, so I don't know why some people are surprised by this.
Oh, I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, so what do you think about that?
It's the same thing as if you kneel, the NFL should fire you. Lock her up. Let's lock up political opponents. I mean, he says a lot of things that he can't do.
Roger Goodell came out today and said, I saw this early this morning, posted a thing, commissioner for the NFL, said that they are going to insist that all players stand for the national anthem. I wonder how that's going to go this weekend.
Yeah, and that actually, it sounds better coming from Goodell than it did Trump in my brain. Because a president telling a private corporation they have to do that sounds, a government saying it, sounds worse than Goodell saying it. I don't know. It's such a touchy,
It's nothing, it's not boring. At least we've got
it's
that
not
going for
boring.
us.
It's not boring. The whole protest thing, I want people to protest. I want people to do it appropriately. I want people, whatever side you're on, I want you to have the freedom of speech.
Yeah, last time we brought the whole NFL thing up, I was really having a strong debate in my head about where I thought this was going. And like I said, I really do support the idea that people have the right to protest because that is your First Amendment. That's your First Amendment right. And then I was like, well, it is their job to play football, and it's just like my job to teach school, and is it the right thing to do here? But you know what? Now that I've had more conversations with myself about that after the fact, it's never the wrong thing to exercise your constitutional right. So let's just go ahead and establish that. Now, there may be ramifications inside your business based on that, but if you feel strongly enough that you're going to put yourself out there to draw attention to a cause, regardless of what that cause is, you have the right to do that. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that, because again, I was kind of struggling in my own head. Is this the right way? Is this the right time? Is this the right method? Is it the right, but regardless of all that, really, it boils down to the fact. I just have to distill it down to its essence, which is you have a constitutional right, and it's never the wrong thing to exercise that.
Yeah. Well, if you look at Muhammad Ali, who passed away not that long ago,
right?
When he passed away, he passed away as a hero. I mean, people look back at his stance during the Vietnam War. Here's a person who refused to be called by what he called his slave name, Cassius Clay, and he refused to stand forward. The country went berserk. Thought that's disrespecting the soldiers, the people that are over there dying. You have all your money and your fame because of this country. But he protested. Now, here we are, however many years later, and Trump didn't go to Vietnam because of bone spurs or whatever, or whatever war that was that he got drafted in. It seems to be the same kind of thing. I think it's okay to protest as long as you're not hurting anybody. He was vilified. Of course, he was stripped of his title. He served, 5 years he couldn't fight. I mean, in the prime of his career. So, but now we look back at him as a civil. He stood up for what he believed in. Mm-hmm. I think anytime you stand up for what you believe in, and you're not hurting anybody, that's part of what this country is all about. So I still stand by, or whatever. If those players want to kneel, I don't think they're kneeling because they're disrespecting our country, or that's maybe some of them are. Maybe that's why they're kneeling. But if you take those football players, where else are they going to get that attention?
Right.
They can't just go home and do it in their living room and get the attention. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is their platform. Just like a podcast for somebody, or if you're a boxer, you're going to do it in a.
On the other hand, other people have to figure out how they feel about that. But that's part of the idea about the protest, is to spur a conversation.
Right.
And so it definitely has done that. So.
Okay. Well, Peyton Patrick, Sean Solo, Hayden Couch, we will get to your questions at some point. We are getting towards the end of the podcast.
Yep.
We usually talk about something lighthearted. Anything lighthearted coming to mind? We've just banged away at Trump and.
It's October. We're getting close to the midway point in October. Are you going to dress up for Halloween?
No, I will not.
Do you ever go to Halloween parties?
Yes, I have done it in the past. And of course, people know I'm in a band, so we've had Halloween gigs where I've dressed up and whatever. I remember one year we went as the
band, as a band, you dressed up in.
Oh yeah,
like
the
a
band
like
will
a
go
guar kind of thing. We had these mega costumes on.
Oh yeah, I had the long hair. I was like an '80s thing. I had this fake tattoos on my arm. Our drummer Oh, what's the show? The Watchmen. You know the comic book, The Watchmen.
Yeah.
Rorschach. That's he dressed up as that, so he had the hat on and everything. Yeah, we all. My guitar player was Darth Vader, and he had the whole suit and everything playing the guitar.
That's cool.
So I do a little bit of that. I think it's funny, or actually maybe sad. What is the age that it becomes really awkward, and it's a little awkward to go house to house? Now,
When should
42.
you stop trick or treating?
No, because some of the kids that are listening to this are going to get all dressed up.
Yeah.
Now I have a stepson who's 11, and he's I think it's still fine for him. But he's getting close. I think for me it was about 12. I was like, okay, I can't be the ghost, the Superman.
I had younger siblings, so I always went with him, and I was you still dress up or whatever. But I think it kind of depends on. Because I've seen kids in other neighborhoods, and they're, maybe they're in their teens, 17, even 18, maybe perhaps, where they're still in high school, they're still doing their thing, they're running around with a bunch of their friends. But honestly, a lot of them aren't going to go trick or treating if they're out there just after being goofy, being seen, or maybe they've got their own little party thing. I think that's where it kind of shifts when you start going. I'm old enough to have a gathering of people come to my house. We'll have snacks and whatever we do, right? And so then it becomes something different. It kind of transforms. But yeah, it's a little weird to see, a 25-year-old out there trick-or-treating.
I know now.
Not that I've ever seen that, but I mean, it would be.
I mean, I don't need something at my house at night. Ding dong, a bearded man. Hey, trick or treat. Give me the candy. Let's go. I don't want to see that.
No. It's for little kids, the trick-or-treating part of it. But then it transforms and stuff. We've had Halloween parties. Back and forth. There's some friends of ours that we do this with every single year since we were in high school. Honestly, this is we're running on 30 years worth of Halloween parties every single year. Yeah, and every year we try to do something different, and everybody's trying to outdo each other for the costumes and what kind of food can we make and what kind of props can we make. So we're always doing something like that, But
that's awesome.
But now that my kids are grown, basically, my daughter's almost 22, my son's almost 19. They're not really into maybe doing the same kind of things we do anymore. Yeah. They don't want to hang out with our old friends, so they're going to start doing their thing eventually, I'm sure.
Right, yeah.
So then it becomes like, well, what do we do? And it'll probably be more low-key once the kids kind of get out of the house or whatever. So.
What's funny, my favorite Halloween costume, this is to show you how much things have changed. 6th grade, my last year really to dress up. I go as Freddy Krueger to school. And I was trying to figure out a way to do the knives, so I poked huge roofing nails through the end of a glove, and I had 4 roofing nails. No one said a word all day. I've got sharp nails on the end of my glove. Not a teacher. Nobody said a word, and it was awesome. And I didn't stab anybody, and they didn't expel me.
You weren't taken down for terroristic threatening.
Yeah,
or anything?
we can't do that anymore. Halloween costumes have changed. Okay, well that is the season 3, episode 7, History After Hours podcast. Be sure to look for us on YouTube and Twitter. Facebook. Also, we are working on Lakeside sponsoring our SoundCloud. So if you're missing the audio-only version of this, that is less data, that will be hopefully coming up shortly.
Right.
So hit us up, History After Hours, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.